So, you know that Doechii song, Anxiety? Good little hip-hop R&B song about mental health being sung by one of the biggest current rising stars within the genre. Been smashing it in the charts, and it's just had a full music video released for it. It's a talk of the town. My partner sent me this track the other month. I listened to it and I thought, I recognise that sample. And as I often do when I know a sample in a track, I scroll down to the YouTube comments to see if anyone else recognised it, which is something that you should never do, because I ended up being greeted by several comments along the lines of, yeah, this sample's actually from Seville by Louis Bonfa. What? Okay, so in case you didn't know, Doechii's big hit Somebody I Used to Know does take a sample from the 1967 instrumental Seville by Brazilian guitarist Bonfa. According to Complex magazine, Doechii signed a deal that resulted in Bonfa receiving 45% of the royalties from his song, or rather the Bonfa estate, given that he died in 2001. Now, if you watch Sample Sanctuary's excellent video about the breakdown of samples in Doechii's song, you'll know 3 things about this Bonfa sample. Number 1, Doechii uses under 3 seconds of audio from the original to create a loop that is half that length. Number 2, rather than keeping the entire guitar refrain intact from the original version, he actually does chop it about to make a slightly different riff. And number 3, several other samples go into the making of this song, from artists like Chano and his African Percussion, Mexicali Brass, Lonnie Mac, Los Machucambos, and whoever wrote Baba Black Sheep. It was a while ago. Add to that the various mellotrons, synthesizers, etc. that Doechii plays on the track, and there's a lot more going on to it than just Bonfa's sample. And yet there are numerous comments on the Doechii videos hijacking any praise for Doechii with passive-aggressive demands to give all of the credit to Bonfa. If you actually listen to Seville, you'll realise that the rest of the track doesn't sound anything like Doechii. If we just look at it in terms of runtime, the Doechii instrumental samples less than 3% of Bonfa's original composition, whilst in practical terms, Doechii's song samples pretty much 100% of Doechii's original instrumental. There might be a tad bit of editing here and there to clean the song up, but it's pretty much a new song written over Somebody I Used to Know. And I should stress this is not a complaint on my part at all. I really like the Doechii song. It probably helps that I got inoculated to the one rhythm culture of reggae in my adolescence, in which artists would sing different songs over the same backing tracks, partly due to studio costs, but I also really like it as a creative decision. What bothers me about these kind of comments though is they seem both really reductive and snobbish, as if it's too boring to point out that the sample is from Doechii, so people have to, well, actually. I'd like to say this was an isolated incident, but I have seen it elsewhere. Whilst researching a video recently, I came across PinkPantheress' song Pain. If you have at least a rudimentary knowledge of 21st century UK pop, you should recognise the sample here. And as I expected, YouTube was bang on the money, with numerous people in the comments responding with, "What a great use of Gymnopody's Number 1 by Eric Satie." Okay, this needs to stop. In fairness, Pantheress does shoulder a bit of the blame for this one, given that she mentions in the video description that the Gymnopody sample is in there, which kind of implies that was a decision on her part, rather than Sunship on his remix of Sweet Female Attitude's Flowers. Is that song based on Gymnopody's? Well, it sure sounds like it. But let's be real here, what does PinkPantheress' song have more in common with sonically? Eric Satie or Sweet Female Attitude? Exactly. No one thinks you're clever because you've heard of one of the most iconic pieces of piano music ever made. And the thing is, I am just as guilty of this kind of thing as many of the people I'm having a pop at. I was watching Mike the Snare's review of Camila Cabello's album from last year, and at one point he talks about how the song Boat has a Pitbull sample in it.
And then it hits you with this. I'm not joking here, the hotel room service synth on this song is one of the best moments in music this year.
And at that moment in the video I was screaming, "Wash your mouth out." That's the iconic second melody from Push the Feeling On by the Nightcrawlers, the Mark Kinchin remix. How does Mike the Snare not know that? Jesus, why is this guy not doing his research properly? Taxi, get me to the comment section now. But then I actually listened to Boat and then I was like, oh yeah, those vocals are actually from the Pitbull song. I mean, obviously Sugar Hill Gang came up with that lyric first, but you get the point I'm making here. This Cabello song is clearly a Pitbull reference. We're at the point in musical history where songs that sample songs that sample songs are actually kind of regular now. So consequently, when we talk about the samples of tracks that we listen to, often there's something of a family tree going on. And yet when people don't mention the sample that we find the most interesting in the chain, there's a kind of compulsion to be like, no, 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 do your homework. But as a result of this attitude, we're creating an environment whereby only the first person to ever come up with a musical idea deserves any recognition, and anyone in the interim involved with tweaking or shaping that idea becomes kind of invisible or even persona non grata. And not gonna lie gang, there's something almost worryingly corporate about that attitude. One particularly notable story I think of is the Prodigy song Climatize from their 1997 album Fat of the Land. The drums on this were sampled from a track by the Jedi Knights, aka Mark Pritchard and Tom Middleton. As the story goes, the Jedis tried to sue Liam Howlett for sampling the drums without their permission, only for Howlett to do a no you and be like, actually, you sampled those drums from the Incredible Bongo Band. So with his ill-gotten gains, Howlett actually bought the rights to the Incredible Bongo Band song and then sued the Jedis. Which, given that the Jedi Knights actually put the name of the original song in the title of their track, does feel like one of the most clumsy self-owns in sampling history. But whilst I do think it's a pretty conceited and careless move by the Jedis to come at the Prodigy like that, the fact is that Howlett sampled the drums from them, and regardless of who the royalties go to and the behaviour of Pritchard and Middleton, it does strike me that, creatively at least, Climatize does owe something to the Jedi Knights. And I feel kind of uneasy about the creative history of a song being dictated by a corporate pissing match. You probably all know the story about Bittersweet Symphony by the Verve, their biggest, most well-known song, and yet one that they had to relinquish all of their royalties for many years, given that it sampled Andrew Oldham's orchestral version of Last Time by the Rolling Stones. What made matters even more bizarre at the time is there was actually a dance track that sampled Bittersweet Symphony. It was by a one-off artist called Rest Assured, and the song was called Treat In For Me. This actually reached the UK top 20, and you might be wondering how they got away with that given what happened to Richard Ashcroft and co. Apparently Rest Assured reached out to the Rolling Stones and they were told that if they do their own recording of the strings, then legally they were allowed to clear it. Treat In For Me also includes what you might charitably describe as a rap, which includes a thinly veiled reference to the whole sampling debacle.
Go, go, go. Get on a roll like a rolling stone.
And effectively you have to wonder what the point of this song was other than just clowning on the Verve. But lyrically it does at least acknowledge everyone involved in the sample chain.
I'm feeling bitter, I'm feeling sweet.
Apart from Andrew Oldham. And over time it does feel like the tendency of artists in sampling is moving more towards explicit acknowledgements of the process. You look at Rihanna's breakthrough single SOS for example, which heavily samples Soft Cell's cover of Tainted Love by Gloria Jones. And as well as Soft Cell's beat, she also throws in a lyrical interpolation of the original song. as well as a whole second verse backloaded with references to 80s pop songs. And although Jones does get a bit of a rough deal in this one in terms of acknowledgement, the original song's writer Ed Cobb does get a credit in the Rihanna song. And with Doechii's song, although there's no explicit lyrical reference to Gatekeepers, there's a great visual nod to him in her music video. The fact of the matter is that sampling, interpolations, and even just good old-fashioned inspiration are often much more complicated than people want to give it credit for. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why I kinda get a little annoyed whenever I see someone complaining about the amount of writers who've been credited to what just sounds like a pretty basic trap song. One particularly ugly example came when Beck beat Beyoncé for Album of the Year at the 2015 Grammys. I saw memes being circulated outlining the sheer number of writers, producers and composers involved in Beyoncé's album, as opposed to the number involved in the Beck album, which was just Beck. This was of course an old piece of Kanye drama, so no amount of collateral is too much when it comes to putting him in his place. I have no real opinion on either of these albums, having not heard them at this point, but even though Morning Phase did feature Beck effectively doing it all, he has been no stranger to samples on previous albums that he's done. And in most cases there does seem to be a fair amount of humility on the part of artists who make their music predominantly out of samples.
If you're making records, and if you're DJing and putting out, releases, whether it's mixtapes or whatever, you're sort of adding to this pile, whether you want to admit it or not, you know what I mean? 10 years down the line, you'll be in here.
But those long lists of producers feel kind of important in this age. It's a way of ensuring that everyone gets their flowers even if they only contributed 5 minutes of ideas or programming to the mix. And maybe I'm just a little defensive because I run a channel that's all about reviewing music that had a previous incarnation. I've seen examples of remixes making an artist's career and how the names of certain creatives involved seem to get lost along the way. And yet the complexity regarding sampling does result in some strange loopholes. Burial's music threw a lot of sample hunters off the scent by sampling YouTube covers of R&B songs rather than the actual song directly.
With my head hanging down, with my head hanging down, with my head hanging down.
Which appears not just to have made things legally easier for him, but also just gives his music a unique quality that he might not have got if he'd gone straight to the source for his sample. And thanks to Who Sampled, a lot of people have found those artists who did those cover versions and have left some particularly nice compliments on their YouTube videos. There's also a few instances of artists borrowing ideas from remixes that I don't think tend to get noticed because they're remixes. Take Rain On Me by Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande, which has caused quite a bit of debate on Reddit regarding the exact source of its main riff. Some saying it's from My Feelings For You by Cassius. Others saying it's from the Gwen McRae song that the Cassius song samples. Neither of which sound quite right, but if you listen to the remix of the Cassius song by Le Rhythm Digital, you're welcome, internet. Hell, even that PinkPantheress song actually samples a karaoke version of Flowers rather than the original remix. Who created the karaoke version? Do they deserve a credit? Who knows? So, when it comes to sampling, there's often a lot more names at play than people give credit for. Do I want people to mention all those names when they talk about the music? No. Well, maybe. I did look at Metro Boomin and The Weeknd's cover of I Don't Wanna Know by Mario Winans, just to see how far back the comments would reference the creative chain. And I did see one comment that gave the clunkiest possible shout out to Enya, the Fugees and everyone else. So I don't really want YouTube comments on sampled songs to resemble that of an interminable awards speech. So yeah, while it's good and important to acknowledge the originator of art in these situations, try not to throw other creators under the bus just to seem smart. It's great that people are curious in where things came from, but at the same time, I feel like sometimes it comes at the expense of the people in the middle. Anyways, thank you for watching this sort of rant. Please do subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more semi-provocative analysis from someone who reviews remixes quite a lot. And if there are any aspects of modern sample discourse that get on your nerves, why not tell me about them in the comments below? This video is over.